Riley had been arguing about translation fees for the better part of an hour when the smell hit her. She turned her feather head and found Denny Kowalski sitting 3 stalls away, eating something brown and steaming from a metal container. 2 Pelori merchants had already backed away from him. A Scythony child pointed and asked its mother what was wrong with the air. "Denny," Riley said, abandoning her negotiation and hopping over. "What is that?" "Beef stew," he said through a full mouth. "My mom's recipe." "Well, close enough. Hard to get real potatoes out here. It smells like something died inside another thing that also died." "That's the paprika." Riley clicked her beak in disapproval and sat across from him. This was their routine. Every third day, they met on the market level of Harmony Ring to sort cargo manifests, settle accounts, and eat. Or rather, Denny ate while Riley tried not to look at his food. Harmony Ring was one of the largest trading stations in the neutral zone. Over 200 species passed through its corridors every cycle. It was loud, crowded, and chaotic. It was also, for the most part, safe. The Galactic Concord kept the peace through diplomacy, trade agreements, and a security force that handled petty theft and docking disputes. Serious violence was rare. Most species who lived here had chosen it specifically because it was boring. Denny was not boring. He was a human, and humans had only been part of the galactic community for 12 years. Most species still did not know what to make of them. The classification alone was enough to make people nervous. Class 12 Deathworld. That meant Earth was in the top tier of planets considered actively hostile to life. The gravity was crushing. The weather was unpredictable. The wildlife was endless and creative in its methods of killing. And somehow, humans had not only survived there, but had thrived, built civilizations, and eventually reached the stars. Denny did not look like a monster. He was tall by galactic standards, thick across the shoulders, with short brown hair and a face that always seemed to be halfway to a grin. He worked as a cargo hauler and freelance security consultant, which mostly meant he carried heavy things and occasionally stood in doorways looking large until problems went away. "You hear anything about that ship?" a Lakai merchant asked from a nearby stall, his reptilian eyes flicking toward the docking ring. "What ship?" Riley asked. Before anyone could answer, the station's ambient lighting shifted. It was subtle, just a slight change in color temperature, but every species on the promenade recognized it. It meant the docking authority had flagged an incoming vessel. Not dangerous exactly, but notable. Then the whispers started that Riley's translator picked up fragment from a dozen conversations at once. A name was moving through the crowd like a current through water. She heard in Pelori, in Lakai trade speak, in 3 other languages she barely knew. Pallbearer. The market began to empty. Not slowly, not casually. Merchants pulled down their displays. Customers abandoned their purchases. A group of Scythony took flight toward the upper levels. 2 Concord security officers walked quickly in the opposite direction of the docking ring, and neither one looked back. "Denny," Riley said, her feathers rising flat against her skull. "We need to go. Now. I haven't finished my stew. The pallbearer is here. Gornasic. Do you understand what that means? Big guy, right? For arms? Kills people for money. He has ended more lives than some plagues. He has diplomatic immunity from 6 governments. He once walked into a planetary summit and dragged his target out of the room while armed guards watched and did nothing. We need to leave." Denny looked at his stew. He looked at the emptying promenade. He took another bite. Overseer Mavani's voice filled the station through every speaker. Her tone was calm in the way that authority figures sounded when they were barely holding themselves together. She advised all residents to continue their normal routines, but to avoid the main corridors for the next several hours. She assured everyone that the visitor had lawful clearance and that there was no cause for alarm. Every word she said made people more afraid. Within minutes, the promenade was deserted. Shops were sealed. Corridors were empty. The only sound was the hum of the station's environmental systems and the soft scrape of Denny's spoon against his container. Then the footsteps came. Heavy, slow, deliberate. Each one sent a faint vibration through the floor plating. Gornasic walked into the promenade like death taking a stroll. He was over 8 feet tall, covered in dark armored skin that looked like cracked stone. Forearms hung at his sides, each one ending in fingers that curved into natural blades. His eyes were black from edge to edge, and they moved slowly across the empty market with the patience of something that had never once needed to hurry. He stopped. Because there, in the middle of the abandoned promenade, a human was sitting at a food stall, eating stew. Denny looked up. He met those black eyes without flinching. And then he smiled, wide and warm and completely genuine. "You want some?" Denny said, lifting his container slightly. The broth is unreal. The pallbearer stood motionless. On every security screen across the station, hundreds of eyes watched. Really, hiding behind a support column 20 feet away, stopped breathing. And no one spoke to the pallbearer like that. No one looked at him without fear. No one sat casually in his path and offered him lunch. Gornasic tilted his massive head to one side. He studied the human the way a predator studied something it had never seen before. Something it could not immediately classify as prey or threat. Then, without a word, he walked on. Denny watched him go, shrugged, and went back to his stew. Riley's legs gave out, and she sat down hard on the floor behind the column. Her heart was beating so fast that her feathers vibrated. "Denny," she whispered into her communicator. "What is wrong with you?" His voice came back, relaxed and warm. "Nothing. The stew's really good today." 3 species had already filed formal complaints about the smell in Corridor 9 by the time Riley caught up with Denny. He was walking back toward the cargo levels with his empty stew container tucked under one arm and a look on his face like nothing in the galaxy had ever bothered him. Riley flew in front of him and hovered at eye level, her wings beating fast enough to blur. "You need to explain what just happened." "I offered Guy some stew. He said no." Pretty normal interaction. That was not a guy. That was Gornasic. That was the pallbearer. He has personally ended the lives of over 400 confirmed targets across 7 systems. He once walked through a military blockade and no one fired a single shot because they absolutely knew, that even if they killed him, he would take half of them first. Denny nodded slowly. "Big fella. Yeah, I got that. And you offered him stew. It would have been rude not to." He was standing right there. Riley landed on a railing and pressed both wings against her face. She had been Denny's business partner for 3 years. She had learned many things about humans in that time. They were stronger than they looked. They could survive injuries that would kill most species twice over. They ate things that should not be eaten, and they had absolutely no functioning sense of self-preservation. She had also learned that arguing with Denny when he had already made up his mind was like arguing with a wall, except a wall would eventually crack. They reached the cargo level in silence. Denny's bay was a large, cluttered space filled with shipping containers, spare parts, and a small living area he had built in one corner. It was not pretty, but it was his. He tossed the stew container into a cleaning unit and dropped into his chair. "So why is he here?" Denny asked. Riley blinked. "What?" "The pallbearer. He doesn't just show up for fun. Someone hired him. Someone on this station is a target." That was the thing about Denny that most species missed. They saw the size, the smile, the casual attitude, and they assumed he was simple. He was not simple. He just chose not to make a show of thinking. Riley pulled up her translation logs. Part of her job involved monitoring communication channels for cargo-related chatter, and she had access to several low-security bands. She started filtering through recent traffic, looking for anything unusual that IT took her 20 minutes to find it. A coded message sent on a syndicate frequency, routed through 3 relay points and poorly encrypted. Whoever sent it had been in a hurry. "The target is a Lakai," Riley said, her voice dropping. "A dock worker. Young. He saw something he was not supposed to see." What did he see? A handoff between 2 criminal syndicates. Weapons, maybe. Or data. The message does not say. But the syndicates want the witness gone, and they paid the pallbearer's fee. Denny leaned forward. "Which Lakai?" Riley cross-referenced the docking schedules and work rosters. Her feathers slowly flattened against her body, which was a sign of deep distress in her species. "Finn," she said quietly. That Denny's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted. Riley had seen it before. It was not anger exactly. It was something older and deeper. It was the look of a creature from a world where everything was trying to kill you, and you had decided calmly and completely that you were going to kill it first. Finn was barely an adult by Lokai standards. He worked the cargo docks on the lower ring, moving freight for barely enough credits to cover his food and housing. He was quiet, nervous, and small for his species. Denny had helped him once, months ago, when a broken loader had pinned Finn's tail against a wall. Denny had lifted the loader with his bare hands while Finn stared at him like he had just witnessed a miracle. "He doesn't know," Denny said. It was not a question. Almost certainly not. The message references eliminating the witness before he realizes what he saw and reports it. Denny stood up. He did not rush. He did not panic. He walked to a storage locker, opened it, and began pulling out items. A heavy jacket, a pair of boots with reinforced soles, a small toolkit. "Denny, what are you doing?" "Going to get the kid." "You cannot be serious. The pallbearer has a contract. If you interfere, you become a secondary target. There are no rules that protect you. The Concord will not help. Mavani will not help. No one will help." "I know." "Then what?" He stopped and looked at her. His face was calm, and his voice was steady. "Because he's a kid, really. And he's scared, even if he doesn't know why yet. And nobody else is going to do a damn thing about it." He walked out of the cargo bay and into the corridor. Really watched him go. She thought about all the reasons this was insane. She thought about the pallbearer's four-bladed hands. She thought about the 6 mercenaries the syndicates probably had waiting as backup. She thought about every logical, rational, sensible argument against what Denny was about to do. Then she grabbed her translator kit and flew after him. Denny reached Finn's small quarters on the lower ring. He knocked on the thin door and waited. After a moment, it slid open, and a young Lokai face looked up at him with wide golden eyes. "Mr. Denny," Finn said, surprised. "Is something wrong with the cargo schedule?" Denny smiled. It was not his usual grin. It was softer. Kinda. The kind of smile you give someone when you are about to change their entire night. "Pack a bag, kid. You're staying with me tonight." Finn's eyes grew wider. "Why?" Denny put a hand on the young alien's shoulder, gentle despite the strength behind it. "Because someone paid a lot of money to make sure you don't wake up tomorrow. And I'm not going to let that happen." Nobody on Harmony Ring slept well that night, but for very different reasons that in the upper administrative levels. Overseer Mavani floated in her chamber and refreshed her security feeds every 30 seconds. In the merchant quarters, shopkeepers lay awake behind locked doors, wondering if the pallbearer would be gone by morning. In the docking ring, crew members from a dozen different ships debated whether to break their contracts and leave early. And in Cargo Bay 14, Denny Kowalski was reinforcing his door with steel plate while a terrified young Lokai sat on a crate and watched him work. Finn had not said much since Denny brought him here. His golden eyes followed every movement Denny made, and his clawed hands gripped the edge of the crate so tightly that the wood was cracking. Riley had tried to explain the situation to him gently, but there was no gentle way to tell someone that a professional killer had been paid to end their life. "The welds on this frame are solid," Denny said, stepping back to examine his work. "Not pretty, but solid. Anyone coming through this door is going to need more than a key." "Will it stop him?" Finn asked. His voice was small. Denny looked at the door, then at Finn. "No," he said honestly, "but it'll slow him down, and slow is all I need." He moved to the next task. He rearranged the cargo containers in the bay to create narrow pathways and blind corners. He positioned heavy crates at choke points. He checked the fire suppression system and tested the emergency venting controls. He was not building a fortress. He was building a maze, one designed by someone who understood that in a fight, environment mattered more than size. Riley watched all of this from her perch on a high shelf. She had seen Denny work before, but never like this. There was a focus to his movements that reminded her of something she had read about Earth predators. They called it preparation behavior, a hunting pattern, calm, methodical, and deeply unsettling if you understood what it meant. Her communicator buzzed. A message from a Scythony trader she knew. It read simply, "Tell the human we are sorry. There is nothing we can do." Another message arrived from a Pelori cargo partner. "It was good working with you, really. May your next life be kinder." They were sending condolences. Not to Finn, to Denny, because in their minds, he was already dead. The hours passed slowly. Denny made coffee using a batter machine he kept in the corner of his living area. The smell filled the cargo bay. Finn wrinkled his scaled nose, but said nothing. Riley had long ago accepted that humans consumed things that defied reason. Then Mavani called. Her voice came through Denny's private channel, thin and trembling. Mr. Kowalski, I am asking you, as a personal request, to release the Lakai. The pallbearers' employers have significant political standing. If this situation escalates, it could threaten the entire station's neutrality agreement. With respect, Overseer, the kid didn't do anything wrong. I understand that. But one life against the safety of 200,000 residents is not a calculation I can ignore. Then don't calculate. Just do the right thing. There was a long silence. I cannot protect you, Mr. Kowalski. I'm not asking you to. The call ended. Denny took a sip of coffee and said nothing else about IT. IT was 3 hours before the dawn cycle when the footsteps came. Heavy, measured, unmistakable. They stopped outside Cargo Bay 14. Finn's entire body went rigid. His tail curled tight against his legs. Riley's feathers pressed flat, and she made herself as small as possible on her shelf. The pallbearer's voice came through the reinforced door. It was deep, resonant, and utterly without emotion. Human, I know what you're doing. I respect what you're doing, but it will not change the outcome. You have until the station lights cycle to dawn mode. Surrender the target, and you will not be harmed. Denny set down his coffee. He walked to the door. He unlocked it, pulled it open, and leaned against the frame. Gornasic filled the corridor. His black eyes reflected the dim lighting. His 4 arms hung loose at his sides, the blade fingers slightly extended. He smelled like cold metal and something ancient. Then he looked up at him and smiled. Okay, so, a priest, a quantum physicist, and a black hole walk into a bar, Denny said. The pallbearer did not move. The bartender looks up and says, "What is this, some kind of singularity event?" The physicist says, "Technically, yes." The priest says, "I have questions about the afterlife." And the black hole doesn't say anything because it already consumed the punchline. Silence. Complete, total silence. Somewhere on the station, a security officer watching the feed dropped his drink. Gornasic stared at Denny. His massive head tilted slowly, the same way it had on the promenade. His black eyes narrowed by a fraction. "You tell jokes," the pallbearer said. "In the face of death, you tell jokes." "Yeah, well, it's a human thing." Denny picked up his coffee cup from where he had set it on a crate just inside the door. He took a long, slow sip. Then he looked the 8-foot assassin directly in those black eyes. "I'm not giving you the kid, so either come in and try to take him, or sit down and I'll pour you a cup." The pallbearer's 4 hands flexed. The blades caught the light. Neither of them moved. The standoff had begun. The pallbearer did not leave. He stood in the corridor outside Cargo Bay 14 like a statue carved from black stone. He did not pace. He did not shift his weight. He simply waited, patient as gravity. Inside the bay, the hours crawled. Riley had stopped trying to sleep. She sat on her shelf with her wings tucked tight, watching the door and listening to the faint sound of the assassin's breathing on the other side. It was slow and steady, like the ticking of something that would eventually go off. Finn was sitting on the floor with his back against a cargo container. He had pulled his knees up to his chest and wrapped his tail around himself. His golden eyes were wide open and fixed on nothing. And Denny was doing push-ups. 47, 48, 49. Finn watched him with the kind of bewilderment that went beyond fear. "Ow," he said quietly. "How are you doing that right now?" Denny paused at the top of a push-up. "Doing what?" "That. Exercise. Anything. There's a killer outside that door who has ended more lives than I can count. And you are counting repetitions." Denny finished the set and sat back on his heels. He was not even breathing hard. Humans from heavy gravity worlds had endurance that most species found obscene. He grabbed a water container and took a long drink. "You want the honest answer?" he said. Finn nodded. "I am scared." The cargo bay went quiet. Even Riley looked up. "I'm scared," Denny said again. like it was the simplest fact in the world. My hands are shaking 10 minutes ago. My heart rate has been high since he showed up outside. There's a part of my brain, a very old part, that is screaming at me to run. Every human has that part. We call it the lizard brain, which is funny considering present company. He glanced at Finn with a half smile. Finn did not laugh. Then how are you still here? How are you not frozen like everyone else on this station? Denny set the water down and sat on a crate across from Finn. He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was different. Not softer exactly, but more honest. Like a door had opened to something he did not usually show. Where I come from, he said, everything is trying to kill you. That's not a saying. That's a fact. The planet itself is hostile. The weather changes without warning. The ground shakes and splits open. The oceans rise and swallow cities. And the animals, Finn, the animals are everywhere, and they are creative. We have things with teeth the size of your arm. We have tiny creatures so poisonous that touching them stops your heart. We have parasites that get inside you and rewrite your behavior. Finn's tail tightened around himself. Every species in the galaxy has a fear response, Denny continued. Most of them freeze. It's the smart move, actually. If a predator can't see you move, sometimes it passes you by. But on Earth, freezing got you killed. The predators didn't pass you by. They came for you. So humans evolved a different response. When we're terrified, something in our brain flips a switch. Instead of freezing, we laugh. You laugh, Finn repeated, at things that are trying to kill you. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, right? But it works. Laughter does something to the human body. It changes our chemistry. It lowers the panic, steadies the heartbeat, sharpens the focus. And it does one more thing that nothing else can do. It confuses the predator. Every dangerous creature on Earth understood growling, hissing, screaming, running. Not a single one understood laughing. It made them hesitate. And hesitation was all we needed. Riley clicked her beak softly from her shelf. She was recording this. She did not know why, but she felt like it mattered. Denny looked down at his hands. They were big hands, scarred and calloused from years of hauling freight. When I was 12, he said, there was a wildfire near our home. My brother Bram was 8. The fire moved faster than anyone expected, and it cut us off on a hillside. No way out. No help coming. Bram was crying so hard he couldn't breathe. The cargo bay was silent. Even the hum of the station systems seemed to fade. I was terrified, Denny said. I was a kid. I didn't know what to do. But I looked at my brother, and I started telling him the worst jokes I could think of. Just stupid, terrible jokes. Knock-knock jokes. Why did the chicken jokes? And he started laughing. Through the tears, through the smoke, he laughed. And we started moving. We kept moving until we found a creek bed, and we followed it down the hill and out of the fire. He looked at Finn. I can't promise you won't be scared, kid. You should be scared. That thing outside our door has killed hundreds of people, and he's very, very good at it. But I can promise you this. While you're with me, you won't be alone with it. You won't have to freeze by yourself in the dark. Finn stared at him for a long time. Then, slowly, the young Lakai's grip on his own knees loosened. Just a little. His breathing slowed. Not because the fear was gone, but because something else was sitting next to it now. Something that smelled like bad coffee and sounded like a calm voice telling terrible jokes. Then a new sound came from the corridor. Not the pallbearer's steady breathing. Footsteps. Multiple footsteps. Heavy boots hitting metal plating in formation. Riley checked her scanner, and her feathers went completely flat. Denny. 6 armed contacts approaching from the docking ring. They're not station security. Denny looked at the door. He looked at Finn. He cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders, and let out a slow breath. Well, he said. He brought friends. He was still smiling. The 6 enforcers lined up behind the pallbearer like shadows, finding their proper places. They were mixed species, hired muscle from the kind of places where questions cost extra. 2 were Drothi, smaller than Gornasic, but still massive. 3 were Kalani, insectoid, fast, with limbs that could punch through sheet metal. The last one was a species Denny did not recognize, broad and silent, carrying a weapon that hummed with a low electric charge. Through the reinforced door, the pallbearer spoke one final time. Your time is up, human. Step aside. Inside the bay, Riley had moved Finn to the deepest corner behind 3 layers of cargo containers. She pressed herself against him, her small, feathered body shaking, but she did not leave. Finn gripped her wing without thinking, and she let him. Denny stood in the center of his cargo bay. He cracked his knuckles. He rolled his neck. He smiled. "I was hoping they'd bring friends," he said quietly, to no one in particular. The door came in hard. The first enforcer, one of the Kalani, burst through with speed that would have caught any other species off guard. Denny was not any other species. He had positioned a cargo container on a release latch directly inside the entrance. As the Kalani came through, Denny kicked the latch. 800 pounds of freight swung sideways on its track and slammed into the enforcer, pinning it against the wall with a crunch that echoed through the bay. The second and third came together. Denny was already moving. He fought the way humans fought when there were no rules and no referees. He was not graceful. He was not elegant. He was a 220-pound primate from a world with crushing gravity, and every punch he threw carried the weight of a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history fighting things bigger than itself. He grabbed a metal support bar and swung it into the second Kalani's midsection. The impact folded the insectoid in half. The third one caught him across the shoulder with a bladed limb, and Denny felt skin tear, but he did not stop. Pain was just information. Humans had learned to file it away and deal with it later. He triggered the fire suppression system in Section 2 of the bay. Chemical foam exploded from the ceiling vents, blinding the 2 Drothi enforcers who had just pushed through the door. They stumbled, clawing at their eyes. Denny hit one in the knee with the support bar, and the joint bent the wrong way. The second Drothi swung blindly and connected with Denny's ribs. Something cracked. Denny grunted, grabbed the alien's arm, and used its own momentum to throw it headfirst into a cargo stack point 4 down. 2 left. The unknown species came at him with the electric weapon. It fired once, and the charge hit a metal crate next to Denny's head, melting a hole through it. Denny dove behind cover, grabbed a cargo hook from the floor, and threw it. Not at the enforcer. At the overhead lighting panel above the enforcer. The panel shattered, and sparks rained down, shorting out the weapon. Before the alien could react, Denny was on it. 2 hits. Hard, fast, and aimed at joints. It went down. The last Kalani was faster than the others. It caught Denny across the back with a slashing limb, and he felt hot blood run down his spine. He spun, caught its next strike on his forearm, and headbutted it. The Kalani staggered. Humans had thick skulls. It was one of the many design features of a Deathworld species that seemed excessive until you saw them in action. Denny hit it twice more, and it dropped. The cargo bay was a mess. Foam, sparks, broken containers, and 6 unconscious enforcers scattered across the floor. Denny stood in the middle of it all, bleeding from his shoulder, his back, and a cut above his eye. His ribs screamed with every breath. His hands were shaking, not from fear but from adrenaline that had nowhere left to go. Then the pallbearer stepped through the door. Gorn Nassik looked at his fallen allies. He looked at the destroyed bay. He looked at the human standing in the wreckage, covered in blood that was mostly his own, breathing hard, and still standing. "Impressive," the pallbearer said. It was the first word Denny had heard him say that carried any emotion at all. The assassin stepped over the bodies and walked toward Denny. Each step was slow and deliberate. His forearms spread slightly, the blade fingers extending to their full length. He was not rushing because he did not need to. "In 200 years, Gorn Nassik said, I have killed across 37 worlds. Warriors, soldiers, kings. Not one of them fought like you." Denny wiped blood from his eye. His legs were unsteady. His vision was slightly blurred on the left side. Every part of his body was telling him to fall down. He laughed at it came out rough and broken, half breath and half sound. But it was real, because he was terrified, and that was exactly when humans laughed. That was the whole point. When the fear was the worst, when the body screamed to give up, something ancient in the human brain lit up and said no. Not like this. Not quietly. The pallbearer raised all 4 arms. The blades caught the dim light. Denny did not flinch. He did not step back. He stood there, swaying slightly, grinning through blood. "Come on then," he said. The pallbearer lunged, and every screen on the station exploded with light. Overseer Mavani's face filled every screen, every display panel, and every personal device on Harmony Ring. She looked different. The soft trembling that had defined her every public appearance for the last 24 hours was gone. In its place was something that surprised everyone who knew her: resolve. "Attention all residents and visitors of Harmony Ring," she said. "This is an emergency broadcast from the office of the Overseer. Approximately 1 hour ago, I transmitted a complete evidence package to the Galactic Concord Central Authority. This package contains full records of illegal weapons transactions conducted by the Verith and Soul Line syndicates within this station's jurisdiction. Arrest warrants have been issued across 3 systems. All contracts originating from these organizations are hereby declared void under Concord law." The broadcast played on every screen in Cargo Bay 14. The pallbearer stopped mid-stride. His 4-bladed arms hung in the air, inches from Denny's face. His black eyes moved to the nearest display panel and stayed there. Denny did not move. He stood exactly where he was, bleeding, swaying, grinning like an idiot, and waited as a soft chime sounded from somewhere on the pallbearer's body. He tilted his head and listened to something Denny could not hear. A private communication channel. Confirmation. The contract had been dissolved. The clients had been arrested. The money was frozen. There was no job. Slowly, very slowly, Gornasek lowered his arms. The blades retracted. His massive body straightened, and he stood at his full height, looking down at the battered human in front of him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "The contract is void," the pallbearer said. "I heard. By my code, no payment means no kill. Convenient code." The pallbearer's head tilted again. That same studying motion from the promenade, from the first time he had seen a human sit calmly in his path and offer him food. "In 200 years," he said, "no creature has ever made me feel uncertain. You are injured. You are outnumbered. You had no chance of winning. And yet you stood here in my path and you laughed." Then he wiped blood off his chin with the back of his hand. "Yeah, what your kind call what you just did." Denny thought about it for approximately half a second. "Tuesday," he said. The pallbearer stared at him. Then something happened that no living creature in a galaxy had ever witnessed. The corners of Gornasek's stone-like mouth twitched. Not a smile, not even close, but a movement, an acknowledgement that something had gotten past every wall the assassin had ever built. He turned and walked out of the cargo bay without another word. His footsteps faded down the corridor, steady and measured, the same as when he had arrived. Within an hour, his ship undocked from Harmony Ring and jumped to faster than light that he was gone. The station came back to life slowly, the way a forest wakes up after a predator passes through. Doors opened. Voices returned. The market level began to fill again, cautiously, with merchants checking over their shoulders and talking in low tones about what had happened. In Cargo Bay 14 really was already working. She had pulled out the medical kit from Denny's storage locker and was fussing over his injuries with a focus that bordered on aggression. She cleaned the cut on his shoulder. She sealed the gash on his back. She wrapped his ribs with a compression bandage and scolded him with every layer. 3 cracked ribs. Lacerations on 40% of your upper body. Minor concussion. You absolute reckless fool of a primate. Ow! Hold still. You're pulling too tight. Good. Finn emerged from behind the cargo containers. He moved slowly, like he was not entirely sure the danger had passed. His golden eyes were still wide, but they were no longer frozen with fear. He looked at Denny, at the blood, at the wreckage of the bay, at the 6 unconscious enforcers being dragged away by station security who had finally decided it was safe to show up. "You did that," Finn said. "For me." Denny looked at him. "I did that because it was the right thing to do. That's all." Finn's tail uncurled. He stood a little straighter, and in a voice that was small but steady, he said, "Thank you, Mr. Denny. Just Denny, kid." Later, after the medics had come and gone, after the security reports had been filed, after Mavani had sent Denny a private message that simply read, "I am sorry it took me so long," Denny sat in the one corner of his bay that was not destroyed and called his brother that Bram's face appeared on the screen, younger and cleaner, and sitting in what looked like a well-organized medical office. "Hey, you look rough. What happened?" Denny looked at his bandaged arms. He looked at Riley, who had fallen asleep on her shelf with her beak tucked under one wing. He looked at Finn, who was curled up on a cargo blanket on the floor, sleeping deeply for what might have been the first time in days. "Nah," Denny said. "Quiet week." Bram squinted at him. "You're lying." "Probably." "How's the outpost?" "Boring." "You sure you're okay?" "I'm good, Bram. I'm good." They talked for another 10 minutes about nothing important, the way brothers do when the important things are too big to say out loud. Then Denny signed off and sat in the dim light of his wrecked cargo bay, sore and tired and alive that on her shelf, Riley was not actually asleep. She had her personal log open, recording in a whisper so soft that only her translator could pick it up. Personal log. Riley, Sithany translator, Harmony Ring Station. I have been studying humans for 3 years now, and I understand them less with every passing day. Every species in this galaxy has a survival instinct. Most of us freeze. Some of us run. A few of us fight. Humans are the only species I have ever encountered that laugh. They laugh when they are scared. They laugh when they are hurt. They laugh when everything is falling apart around them. And somehow, against every rational calculation in the known universe, it works. I will never understand them, but I am very, very glad they are on our side. She closed the log, tucked her beak back under her wing, and finally slept. Denny sat in the quiet, bruised and bandaged, and smiled at nothing in particular. Just another Tuesday.